to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a baller.
Welcome back. It's Wednesday, July 9th, Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Borganoni, and I'm joined by Matthew Betz and Jason Moore.
We're back, baby. Training camp on the horizon. Summer is here. It is hot. And we're talking running backs today, so it should be a great show.
It's so hot.
So hot.
Oh, my God, it's so hot. I'm dying. We played pickleball this morning, and I'm dead.
Outside?
The last game of every... No, good. I'm not a young man.
Oof.
That's a young man's game. We used to play outside. No, get out. But it's still... Don't worry. Still hot as balls inside. Just like you can't AC a warehouse cold enough. It's 80 degrees. It's humid. Awful.
There's a certain point of the day in Arizona where if someone says pickleball, there's zero chance you are outside. Like zero chance in the summer.
Yeah, because that's called that's like not even a joke. You'd die.
I told my kids, like they had to understand for a while, like we don't go outside in the middle of the day. You don't go to the park.
Right.
You don't play. You're not allowed to play at certain points of the day. So yeah, it's usually pretty early. I have been getting some outside pickleball here on the East Coast, Jason, where it is humid, but it's also, I know it's been humid where you're at, but it's gross. It's a gross time of the year.
Well, thankfully we have fantasy football because fantasy football is awesome.
Source? What's your source on that?
Source, myself.
Okay, good.
Self-source. On this show, Betz mentioned that we will be talking dynasty running back tiers last week. We went through the top 50 wide receivers in tiers, and we didn't, talk about every single one of them, but I thought we had some interesting conversations about certain teams where we have certain players ranked. And so we'll go through running backs. And I was doing some soul searching because everyone knows you need really good running backs, and everyone knows they don't last very long. So how do you approach that? We'll talk about more of the strategy with that. But at the top, I needed to mention our draft analyzer in the Ultimate Draft Kit Plus is out. And one of the coolest features that we added this year is that it analyzes your entire league, not just your team, not just your strengths and weaknesses, but our dev team, put this together. So I'm looking right now at our Dino Junior League that the three of us are in. Mm-hmm. We are in 3 different seasons of our rosters. Very, very different.
I'm just in the season I'm always in. I don't understand. I go through seasons. I have one season. It's winning. It's at the top. That's it. What are these seasons you speak of? Tell me more.
Well, there was a period where, much like Andy in the main Ballers Dynasty League, he's just kind of always around. Andy's teams were probably way better. I was that team that every single year, how the heck did this team get in the playoffs? How did this team scratch and claw his way? And I finally realized last year it's time for me to sell. And so right now I am the lowest ranked team in this. But I want you guys to know this, that I do have a positional advantage against you guys at quarterback. So if you're looking to upgrade, I have an A+ with Josh Allen, and you guys really need to work on that. But I'm looking at Betz. He's ranked 7th in the league. Jason's at 2. Schneider, who is on our dev team, has got a great team. Probably should have won it last year. He's ranked number 1.
He should win it every year. He has the best team every year. He never wins it. I love
terrible
that.
management.
That's my favorite thing about him is that his great team loses every year. Honestly, Kyle, as a rebuilding team with Josh Allen, like that shouldn't exist. You should not be a rebuilding team. That is such a valuable asset that isn't, he's not an elder statesman, but he is older. It's not like you have Jalen Hurts several years younger or someone where it's like, if you rebuild in 3 years or 2 years, Josh Allen's still going to be good. But at that point, you're going to have a nearer expiring asset, and you could get a young quarterback plus picks for Josh Allen. You really genuinely should be looking into that. And that's not just for you. That's for any rebuild. You've got to look at your great older assets and get something for them.
Wow. Jason's telling me on the podcast that I need to trade away my most valuable asset on my team. And yet everybody in the league knows this, Jason. They're trying to get him for beans because they know I'm rebuilding. That's what stinks.
All right. Well, maybe we should talk.
I love that every time we talk about Kyle's team, he just brings up Josh Allen. like literally, that's all you have to talk
That's all
about.
he's got.
Your team is atrocious, man. Yeah, you gotta go for the full rebuild. I was just gonna say on the draft analyzer, especially in dynasty leagues, I actually love the fact that, and chaos is gonna happen. You can't predict NFL season, obviously, in July. But it gives you an idea as to like where your team is likely at in terms of the pecking order of your league. So it makes for a pretty easy way if you pull up the analyzer to be like, okay, here are my trading partners. If you're a contender in the top 3 or 4, look who we think are probably the bottom 3-4 teams in your league based off of projected rosters and all those things. And you've got your trade partners there. One team wants to rebuild, you're going for the ship. It kind of makes it easy to see there and lays it out for you. So yeah, man, check it out in the UDK.
Yeah, and I go through, when I get these type of grades, I look at the teams and say, who has the draft capital that I want to trade for as I'm rebuilding? And I have done that. So I feel like I'm ahead of the 8 ball of a rebuilding team. I have multiple firsts for the next couple of years. Andy, on the other end, I'm going to just put him on blast. I feel like Andy's 5 years away from competing in the main Ballers Dynasty.
Yeah, and he doesn't have any of his picks. He's going to have the best picks, but someone else has them.
Oh no!
So
he's rebuilding without his own picks
for this first year. It's
this
bad.
year, he doesn't have this year's picks.
That is rough.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So make sure you go to ultimatedraftkit.com, get it in on the draft analyzer. But we're going to talk as many running backs as we can today.
Dynasty Rankings.
So last week I mentioned we talked about the tiers for the top 50 Dynasty wide receivers. If you want a full write-up on that, all 50 wide receivers, that's there on the website, all of our rankings. We'll talk a lot about Jason's rankings today because there is a couple of tiers. I don't know if you realize this, Jason, but there are certain pockets where you are very different in how you approach running backs. And maybe that's also personal pain because your main Ballers Dynasty team has had a lot of pain with running backs.
Mm-hmm.
But
I hate them. Running backs suck.
Jason, I've never met someone who hates his own players more than Jason.
That's true. I'm the opposite of Josh. All my players, they're the worst.
But one of the things we mentioned last week is that tiers are arbitrary, meaning I'm looking through the Ballers rankings, the consensus rankings of Andy, Mike, and Jason, and kind of eyeballing where I think this is a tier break, because in Dynasty, we're projecting over multiple years. We're not using a statistical projection of here's what I think Achane is going to do in 2028. We're not bringing that up right now because so much changes in the NFL. There's also so much, I wrote this in there, you don't know what you don't know. For instance, last year, Jonathan Brooks was seen as a top 10 Dynasty running back in startups, okay? We knew that he was hurt. We didn't know that Chuba was going to get an extension, and we didn't know Brooks was going to get hurt again. So a lot changes there. Also, Travis Etienne was seen as the RB7. Jason is on Jason's team, but there's so much you don't know what you don't know at this position. And I would say, apart from quarterback, wide receiver, and tight end, running back is one of those that you can look at this list, and I'll go through some of the names of the last decade, where when it evaporates, it's gone. It's just, the value at least is gone. You can still squeak out some meaningful seasons. Like, for instance, Austin Eckler was the RB6 in 2023 in Dynasty. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
It was gone. Now, Austin Eckler now is in Washington, and I would say as a, flex for your team, he's going to have usable weeks, but the value in itself.
But he's vanished. Yeah, he's poof. He's gone.
Yeah, nobody cares. So I'm looking at this list going back to 2015, which has some really fun names if you've been playing fantasy since the start of the Footballers podcast, like Jeremy Hill was the RB4 in Dynasty way back then. And then there's just a lot of names. The name that just keeps showing up for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a row in the top 10 is Saquon Barkley. That's a crazy run for a running back to be in the top 10 of how we value the running back position. But every year, there's about 3 to 4 running backs that drop from the top 10 list. So we'll talk about some names today. Last year, CMC, Etienne, Kyron, and Jonathan Brooks are no longer in the top 10 based on other consensus lists. So any of those you want to comment on from last year's list that is most painful? I know Etienne for Jason. Betz, anybody here that's just painful for you?
You mean the ones from last year that were considered top 10 guys that are no longer viewed that way?
Yep.
I mean, I don't really know. I don't think anybody knows what to do with Kyron. He's It's to me.
Where's the extension?
To me, that's it, right? It's like we know Sean McVay loves him. He's not the most talented running back in the league, but he does what he's supposed to do. He's trusted and all those things. The second he signs a 2-year, 3-year extension for, starter money, you feel great about him in Dynasty. The fact they keep spending, and not high draft capital, but it's not nothing either, right? On Blake Corum and Jarquez Hunter in back-to-back seasons, just leaves that little doubt in the back of your mind. So that's sketchy. I've got him in a couple places. I'm definitely sketched out for sure. And everybody in my league knows it, right? So you can't really trade him away. So I'm waiting for that extension. But I feel like if he gets that extension, he'll be viewed as a, maybe not top 10, but top 12, top 13 type guy.
ETN is one of those names that you thought would have staying power just based on the draft capital they spent, the fact that they gave him a 5th-year option, and yet what you didn't see coming is this coaching staff's gone. They have a completely new regime that seems like they don't care, and we're assuming he's not a Jaguar next year. So those are just one of those cases of draft capital's there, the previous year fantasy finish, which is usually a very predictive stat, like, hey, what was your fantasy points the year before?
The running back 3. That's insane. He was the running back 3 2 years ago. Got the 5th-year option. He's a first-round draft pick. And then he just absolutely sucked. I mean, he sucked. 3.7 yards per carry this last year. Only 2 touchdowns. He, in the passing game, in the receiving game, 6.5 yards per reception is really, really bad. And that was supposed to be his specialty. The year, his rookie year or his first season was 9 yards of reception, 8.2 in that running back 3 finish. So hopefully we see a different ETN and he looks great. I don't think that's going to happen. He's the worst one because usually the guys that evaporate are older players. You can see it coming a little bit clearer. In the case of Kyron Williams, you could see the contract situation coming. Like, if this season ends and he doesn't get an extension, he's not going to be a Ram, and he's not going to get a big market, and he'll evaporate. He'll be a committee back on some middling offense, and he'll be pretty irrelevant for fantasy football. You could see it coming. Travis Etienne's, you could not see that coming. You could not see him going from the running back 3 to just a guy who is a Jag, like on the field, just a guy. And, that was kind of crazy.
I was thinking about a metaphor to explain this, and the other day we had a tire pop, and I had to change it, okay? And I thought it was one of those moments where I got to, walk it through with my son. One of my sons really wanted to do. The other one's like, why is this not fixed yet? But I actually got to change the tire with my son. But when you have a set of tires, you're not thinking, oh, I'm going to have to change this, a year or 2, whatever from now. But when it happens, you are just completely thrown off. And my son asked me right after we changed it, he says, hey, how long until we have to do this again? And I was like, I have actually no clue. I would think that it's a long time from now, 100,000 miles or whatever. But literally tomorrow I could, this could pop. I don't think it will. And with some of these running backs, it feels like they're going to be fine forever. But we will have this podcast a year from now, talk about running backs, talk about tiers, and there will be some names in the first couple tiers that were like, oh my gosh, I just thought they were locked in and I didn't see this coming. A coach changes, or they bring in a day 2 running back, or they get injured.
Or one of the rookie running backs suck unexpectedly and then their value plummets. There's a lot of different ways, but let's get into the tiers and figure out where those breaks, because the first tier, that's not going to happen.
This isn't going to be
barring
the sexiest
ACL or something.
Right. So in tier 1, I'm calling them cornerstones. It's Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, Genty. It's probably the names that you thought of. And I'm just looking at our rankings. That's exactly in Jason's order. I just want to make this point, though, because the question we get a lot from people is, I'm rebuilding. What do I do with these running backs? I feel like it doesn't mean because you are identifying your team as bad, the rest of your team is bad, that all of a sudden you have to trade these players because they're a running back. It's like Bijan and Gibbs, 2 years in the league, 2 years of elite production. It doesn't mean that they're just going to evaporate overnight. And because you are 2 years out, you're totally screwed. If anything, you have enough where you can sustain value for another year. But if you're saying, I'm not going to compete, my team is Andy Holloway levels of bad. That's the good bar, right? Is just
That's a great bar, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's a terrible bar, but yeah.
What would it take for you, if you're in that situation, to trade away somebody like Gibbs or Bijan?
I mean, I'm not trading those guys away on a rebuild unless I'm getting a better wide receiver asset. If I'm going to turn a Bijan, a Gibbs into one of the, into a Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase in some kind of package, okay, I'm fine with that. I expect the wide receivers to get more contracts, to last longer, to hold up later into their career. That's great. But I'm not just saying, oh, it's a running back, so I need to get out because by the time my team is good in 2 years, they're not going to be good. These cornerstone tiers, Bijan, Gibbs, and Genty, they're 23, 23, and 21 years old. So 2 years from now, your team should be fine. You should be good. And having a 25-year-old running back is not that big a deal. And these are the type of prospects we already know they're getting another contract. There's no question. I mean, any player out there can tear their ACL and have a career-ending injury or something like that. Outside of that, these guys are getting another monster contract. When you look back at draft capital, it really does make a difference whether you're an early first-round pick or a late first-round pick for running backs. Even late-round running backs in the first round usually hit great. Omarion Hampton, I got no fears. But there is a big difference when you are so good that at this position you are taken in the top 10, like a Bijan, like a Genty, like Saquon Barkley. You're like, oh, Saquon's been there forever. He is truly one of those generational type of players. When you're that good and you're set apart, you're going to get contracts. You're going to play later into your career. I've got no fears. It's different. It's different than all the other running backs who you worry, will they get another contract or will they have to switch teams and be in a committee?
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add. These are the guys, and kind of just to your point about there's an idea like running backs are for contenders, wide receivers are for rebuilders. It's kind of like the general mantra, dynasty players live by. These running backs are for everybody, no matter what. Like you said, they're first round startup picks. 1 QB leagues. These guys are going in the first round for a reason. So yeah, even if you are in a rebuild, I mean, I'm only moving one of these guys if I can get, like Jason said, somebody from last week's episode that's in the untouchables tier, which, just to remind you, was Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Malik Neighbors, and CeeDee Lamb. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep them.
Yeah, it would need to be, if somebody's offering you something from that next wide receiver tier, the Amon-Ra, Drake London group, I need extra draft cap. I need you to give me first too. Like I need you to really move me from there. But it is interesting when I was looking at these three in our projections, the UDK. It's like, who do I think has the most total touches this year? I feel like it might be Genty. And I think Bijan might have the most yards, but Gibbs might have the most touchdowns. So at the end of the day, the answer is probably just yes. They're going to be good. Move on. We don't have to go too much. I think this next tier is where we're going to have the best discussion. So let's take a quick break and we'll get back to tier 2. All right, we're moving on to tier 2 of the running backs, and I was trying to figure out the best way to describe this 4-pack, and the word was electricity or electric city. These guys, if I have them on my team, not only do I view them as an RB1, I view them as they could win me the week, TBD on Omarion Hampton, but it's Devon Achane, Bucky Irving, Omarion Hampton, and Saquon Barkley, who sticks out as, wow, you're way older, but when I look at our rankings and see the way that, Andy and Mike, Jason, you might be a little different here, but we're not just scared of Saquon by his age. You might be one of those people that if you need to capitalize on it and someone's going to give you a monster haul, then this year or next year is the year to do it. But this is a group, like I have Achane in a league where he's my RB1, and although he's really, really small and doesn't feel like the prototypical RB1, he's going to crush this year. Like you guys adjusted your projections, Jason. Achane's just shot up the rankings.
Yeah, I mean, with Jonnu Smith gone and a 33-year-old Darren Waller replacing him, Devon Achane is going to be near 100 targets. And if you are a running back with that kind of explosiveness and you're living near triple-digit targets in the passing game where fantasy football thrives. I mean, reception is worth 2.5 times a carry. So it's like, yeah, maybe he doesn't, he's not going to be one of those backs that goes out there, gets 300 carries. you have to factor in how valuable. I mean, look at Austin Eckler for years when he was getting 100 targets in the receiving game as a slightly undersized back. He was the running back 1 in fantasy. He was the running back 2 in fantasy. He was dominant. And so, yeah, Achane is absolutely there. Whether you want to be like, oh, he was less efficient this last year, it doesn't matter. None of it matters for a running back that gets 100 targets. If you get 100 targets at that position, you're a top 6 running back. I can't imagine it's ever happened where a running back has had 100 targets and has not been good. Has not been like a high-end RB1 for fantasy.
It's first name is Theo Riddick, and maybe that's it. I don't know. Who knows? Betz, of this group right here, is there anybody you worry about? Like, for instance, Bucky. I love Bucky, one of the most exciting players in the league, and yet we've elevated him at a spot now where he has to deliver on this, and yet there is the variable of a post-Liam Cohen offense. I mean, they were absurdly efficient last year. They led the league. 46% of their plays went for 5 yards or more. That was number 1 in the league. They didn't have a ton of bad plays. Bucky was super efficient. So any worry about where we have him ranked?
I don't know that I'm worried about where he's ranked. I mean, he's not even 23 years old yet. He will be before the season starts, but entering year 2 is kind of when we see these guys generally take a really big step forward, and you're encouraged by what you saw last year. Now, my only hesitation on Bucky, and this is more of just like a early-ish part of the season take, is like last year when the chips were down in the playoffs, when they had to win to secure the division, all those things, like it was 100% Bucky. Like Rachaad White kind of got phased out. You didn't see Sean Tucker at all. They knew that he's their best player and they went to him relentlessly. Now, earlier part of the year, did they kind of just like scale back a little bit and, manage the touches as the year goes on, because he is a smaller back. He's not really a back that I would say that we all agree is like prototype for 23 touches in a game. We know he can do it, but that's not his necessarily size profile and that sort of thing. So that's my only like small hesitation on Bucky. I'm not really concerned about the loss of Liam Cohen too much, just because the offensive line is so good in Tampa. So you combine Bucky's vision, his efficiency as a pass catcher, all those things with the offensive line play. I think we're still going to see a lot of success for Bucky in this system. So I'm not too concerned there. Like I said, just the only concern for me as far as like early season production might be fewer touches than we were used to towards the end of the season. Not necessarily copying and pasting that, but anytime a guy does what he did in year 1, you have to be excited moving forward.
All 4 of these running backs are on teams that project to be at 9+ wins. So at least you're looking at teams that we're staring at 2025 and saying like, these teams should be good. We want running backs on good teams. Hampton is the one that does scare me. And I feel like it's just slowly been creeping over the summer of like, oh my God, they're going to give Najee more work than I want. Like it's also one of those things when I went back and reviewed last year, the running game, like Dobbins was good. I won't say great, but good for Dobbins. But their O-line was worse than what we wanted. They were 22nd in adjusted yards before contact. And over the second half, the best part of the offense was letting Justin Herbert just rip it. He was 5th in explosive pass rate from week 6 on. And there's a lot of inefficient plays. Like they were in the bottom tier of the league in terms of plays that went for 3 yards or fewer. 56% of their plays went for 3 yards or fewer. That's just atrocious. And so I wonder with the run game that they're going to have to fix stuff. And I also wonder with Hampton, is he going to get enough in year 1 that we're pleased? So Jason, where do you have Hampton? And like, what's your outlook for year 1? And then he's just going to be stable moving into year 2?
Yeah, I mean, so this is a prospect that I think is near flawless. He is not. I would not call him generational because, he does everything well. He doesn't do anything bad, but he also is not extremely exceptional. Like you watch a Genti or a Bijan or Gibbs, and they all have kind of their ways that they, with Gibbs, it's his breakaway speed that just can't be stopped. I don't think Hampton has that, but as a prospect, he's great. A first-round pick is great. You go to a team that wants to run the ball with a good quarterback and stability, it's great. So this is fantasy super gold. I have him in this tier, no problem. I love him. But these are dynasty rankings. These are dynasty startup rankings. This is how, when I'm building a roster, how I'm viewing, if I am, this isn't even, and I think people need to understand this. there's a difference between like Dynasty startup rankings and how you necessarily value players in Dynasty. And it sounds weird because, like, well, isn't that the list of how you value them in Dynasty? Startup means the day that the league is starting, I'm building a team from scratch. I'm not a contender yet. No one has a roster yet. And you're building them from the ground up. I want to build with young guys. So you'll see Saquon a little bit further back in my rankings where I would draft Hampton over Saquon if I am building a roster to start right now. That doesn't necessarily mean I want Hampton more than I want Saquon in all Dynasty leagues. Obviously, I hope that makes sense.
That's a good point.
But as a prospect, I definitely think that Hampton is kind of a can't miss. His situation, everything is great. This year will be slow. The Chargers would be idiots to not utilize Najee a lot. I've gotten to the place where I don't necessarily think, like, I don't believe that Hampton takes over and becomes a bell cow towards the end of the year. I don't think that'll happen. I don't think that the Chargers need that to happen. I don't think it'd be the best thing for their real-life football, for their football players, for keeping themselves healthy for the playoffs. This is a smart, well-run organization. Najee, we're frustrated as fantasy managers with the efficiency numbers and the plotting, accumulation, but Najee stays healthy, and Najee is not a bad running back. He's going to have a lot of positive plays. He's going to help keep Hampton healthy. Hampton's the better player. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you're sacrificing a little bit this year for a young, proven guy that can really dominate. I think he can be a top 6 fantasy running back multiple years in a row once he's given that. And obviously, Najee stayed healthy, but every running back can get injured. If Najee goes down, you're talking about an absolute league winner year one.
I like the way that you distinguish that because it's probably frustrating on your end when you put out rankings and someone looks at him and says, oh, you're clearly saying this with your rank, Jason. And what you're saying is, hey, these are guys in a similar, tier, which is what we're talking about here, that, like, depending on how you're approaching Dynasty, if you're from day one starting up, or, hey, like, if I'm in a spot where I want impact in 2025, then my ranking of Hampton might look, different than Saquon because I have Saquon in my projections for 2025 very, very differently. It's the game we're playing where you have to, make sure you're understanding what season your team is in, what you're doing. For instance, like, I'd love Hampton on my rebuild team, where Saquon, you guys know, I probably would have traded him by now. So it's kind of dependent. And also, there's 4 guys here. I would be very happy with any of these dudes. Okay, so, like, the fact that Jason has Bucky 1 spot behind Achane, does that mean anything to you, Jason?
Did I have Bucky 1 spot behind Achane?
It's a coin flip basically to me. It's close.
It's not a coin flip for me. I think Achane is significantly better than Bucky as a dynasty asset, and so I still worry, and I've been on record saying I've mostly thrown this out, the draft capital of Bucky Irving. I've mostly thrown that out because he was so doggone good. He played his way into, star status, not into decent status, the way we've seen a handful of other players do in recent years, and then they vanish as a 4th-round draft pick. But it still always scares me because should he get injured? Should he play poorly? Should he, have a Travis Etienne? The investment isn't always necessarily there to then be able to come back and be the star you were your rookie season. So there's a twinge of fear there with me still with Bucky. Obviously he's great. So I for that reason I don't have them as a coin flip. I think I would, if I had Bucky and I could trade him for Achane, I would. But they're in the same tier.
I know we spent a lot of time on this tier. We need to move on. But let me ask you guys this, especially you, Jason, because you're obviously confident in Achane. I think there's I don't know how good of a chance, but a decently good one. Like, if the Dolphins win 6 games this year, Mike McDaniel's gone. It's kind of, the clock is ticking. How much of, like, because he's so perfect for what Mike McDaniel does with Tua's, I'm painting it like it's a positive, but, like, they have to get the ball out so quickly because of Tua to keep him healthy that it helps Achane. Like, he seems so specifically, like, tied to how well that he fits in the system. I do have fears on Achane personally that man, if McDaniel's gone and all of a sudden, people are having question marks about Tua again. Like, I think the Dolphins could look way different than we even can wrap our minds around, even in a year from now. So that's my only hesitation with HM. But I know, Jason, you said you're just so bullish on him, and I love it for this year. I think this year is going to be great, assuming
if he goes out this year and catches 85 passes and is a big part of even their bad season. I think the next regime coming in is going to look at their assets and say, okay, who do I have as cornerstones of this roster? I don't see him going away from that. I agree he's a perfect fit for the scheme and the running scheme here. That's part of why I liked him. I wasn't a huge fan prior to the NFL draft, and I immediately became a huge fan when he landed here.
Yeah.
But I do think just his involvement in the passing game, that is systemless.
Like that can cut through all of whatever scheme.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's where my fear is alleviated a bit.
Cool.
All right. Tier 3, I'm calling it RB1 in name, value, or both. And this is the tier that Jason, I think, is the most different from Andy and Mike, because there's a couple of rookie running backs that you have much higher. You would have basically at the top of this tier, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. And then there's a group of veterans that, depending on if they're on your roster or someone else's, you can have a completely different view. So, for instance, Jonathan Taylor's here, Kyron Williams, Breece Hall, and then the last two in this tier is Chase Brown and Christian McCaffrey. Like, I could poke holes in all of those guys by saying Chase Brown, is he going to be able to hold up? Jonathan Taylor, is this a new regime in 2026? Kyron Williams, he needs a contract extension. Breece Hall, where is he in 2026? CMC, please, dear God, stay alive. I need you in so many different places. So let's start first with Jason. Is this a really tough tier? Because they all feel like RB1s if I have them on my roster for fantasy, and yet in 2026, a couple of these guys will not be here. I can't tell you exactly who, but a couple of these guys I know will not be in this tier. They will fall out.
Yeah, you're 100% right, and this is where I would value the youth for that reason. I would throw Caleb Johnson into this tier as well, along with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. Is a very good rookie running back draft class. I view them as they're going to, I think going into next year, maybe one of them won't, maybe it's Caleb Johnson fails, or RJ Harvey fails, or Travion Henderson fails. Someone will fail. But I think the majority of them are all going to succeed, and I want them on my dynasty rosters this year. Jonathan Taylor's the best player in this group. Well, Christian McCaffrey is the best player, but Christian McCaffrey is much older and coming off so much injury that I would put Jonathan Taylor as, like, if you're just looking at take age out of it, like, oh, he's an awesome player. But, you're talking about a 26-year-old versus a 21-year-old in Quinshon Judkins or in Caleb Johnson. So when I look at the next tier of players, when I'm building a brand new roster, I want those young running backs. I love Kyron Williams. I love him. He's one of my favorite fantasy players in redraft. I think he's one of the best values in all of fantasy. And if I had Kyron and could trade him for those rookies, I would feel so much more confident about my future in a dynasty league. So that's just the way I play when I'm building the roster.
I think that makes a lot of sense too, because we often talk about, especially for these elite outlier talents like Derrick Henry and Saquon. Like, Kyron's been awesome for fantasy, obviously, but he's not the most talented back in the world. There is a kind of like clicking, a clock that kind of goes by, a ticking clock that you're like, okay, I know eventually this will run out eventually. And we often talk about just trying to get like a year ahead of that if you can. And obviously every team is different where you're at in terms of your competitive level and those sort of things. But like, that's what Jason's saying is, like, you feel great about the eventual value of Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, these rookies that, man, it's really hard to get a top running back that's young. And if these guys hit in year 1 and year 2, their value is going to skyrocket, right? Whereas like the other guys in this tier, whether it's they should or shouldn't, just because of their age, they are going to fall in value. So I think that's where it's team dependent and how the context of your build in a startup is going as far as how we value these guys. But I agree with you. We don't know who it's going to be, but there's probably going to be, what would you say, maybe like 2, maybe 3 guys in this tier that are going to fall out because of chaos in the NFL. It's hard to predict, but there's a lot of moving parts, and we're only through the top 14 running backs in the rankings, it dries up as far as like your confidence level in Dynasty very quickly.
Yeah, so this tier specifically, I made a move in a league where I had Chase Brown, and right after the NFL draft, I was approached. Somebody wanted Chase Brown because remember the Bengals didn't really add anyone other than Taj Brooks. So I gave away Chase Brown in a late second for the 104, and I took Travion Henderson.
Love that.
And so
Chase Brown, you got Travion Henderson and a second?
No, he got Chase Brown in a second, and I got Travion. Now, I think in the short term, it's very possible that I lost that deal. That Chase Brown has a better year. We're probably going to project him for more. And yet, I know that there's a little bit of fear for me looking at Chase Brown and saying, can he hold up? And he's the player I kind of want to bring up here because from week 9 on last year, he was the RB5. So I can't argue with his production. And only Saquon saw more total opportunities per game. Like they were going to break this dude down the stretch, and they almost made the playoffs doing it. Only Chuba and Kyron had more snaps per game. Like he was used in a crazy way. And I don't know if we ever viewed him as that player. I don't know if the Bengals viewed him as that player because I think their plan going into the season and for the first month was Zach Moss, right? Like it seemed like
looked like Zach Moss came out the gates as the starter.
Yeah.
A starter in a split. I mean, it wasn't like it was his show, but he was the first man up until he got injured in week 8. Week 9 on, Chase Brown was awesome. But it was the passing work again with Chase Brown that I've started to be more and more confident in Chase Brown. He's another guy that could get near 100 targets. He was, I think, a 93 target pace in those last 8 weeks, which is just insane. And those are Joe Burrow targets. Them delicious targets. So, yeah, I mean, I think this season you'll take the L.
Yes.
But the draft capital from both of those guys, I would rather have Travion. Like, again, that's a perfect example. If I'm building a brand new roster today and I'm building for my foundation of how I want the next 5 years to go, I would absolutely take Travion Henderson over Chase Brown.
Yeah. And because there is a bit of worry with Chase Brown that it evaporates a year from now. He's going into year 3. And I built my team heavy on wide receivers, and now I have some room to actually make some headway at my running back position. But this tier is difficult. I like a lot of the players. I want to build with a lot of these players, and yet Breece Hall is like so tough to deal with. It's so tough to deal with him and Kyron right now.
You telling me, brother. Oh, man.
You're telling Jason something he knows very well,
Has
Kyle.
anyone offered you anything for Breece Hall?
Andy's offered me a ton of garbage for him, and I'm not looking to get rid of him for garbage.
Like what?
Breece Hall's a valuable... I don't even remember. So
Seconds.
Just packages and packages of just throwing a bunch of stuff to try to get him. And really, he's one part of bigger trades. But I have gone out and made offers. I've taken Breece and offered for some of these rookies. I tried to get, Judkins or Hampton and, tried to work a package in that way. Breece is not a bad player. Breece could get a ton of targets as well. He did last year. That was his saving grace. Going from Aaron Rodgers to Justin Fields scares me for the target volume a little bit, but he has value. But he's got a bigger name recognition than he has, I think, fantasy football production coming. So that's why I want to trade Breece Hall. Not because I don't want his production, but because I think he should net more in his name value than the production that will come.
Yes.
However, the problem is I'm on record being so kind of sick of Breece Hall and out, like everyone in the league knows how I feel about Breece Hall. So no one is willing to like go after him. In fact, Andy has been the one who he thinks I'm wrong on Breece Hall. He thinks Breece Hall is going to be sensational. And that's why he's made a couple offers. But even then, he's not paying like he believes that. He's wanting to pay what I believe in Breece Hall. And he's just buy him on the cheap. I'm not looking to get rid of Breece Hall on the cheap. That would be foolish. He gets too many targets. Also, speaking of targets, I said earlier, has anybody had 100 targets and not been a top running back? So I looked it up. And in the last decade, there are 2 running backs who had more than 100 targets that weren't very good. Or at least weren't RB1s. One was Tariq Cohen, the Tariq the Dinosaur Hunter.
Dinosaur Hunter,
That's a
of
name.
course.
Yeah, it's funny. These all have nicknames. Well, two of them. And then the other was J.D. McKissick.
Smooches.
Just give me a kiss. But then there's other guys like perfect example of what I'm talking about. James White had over 100 targets. James White does not a great player. He was the running back 8. He was the running back 8 that year.
He murdered the Falcons in the Super Bowl. Just murdered. Just our body's still in the street.
I don't know, man. I think that was more like self-inflicted wounds. Sorry, Falcon fan.
That's kind of what you have to do at some time, some point. So let me give you one quick thought on Breece Hall. What if he goes Josh Jacobs' route, where it was super inefficient? We're like, I don't really want this guy. He's gonna get older. Yet Breece is young enough, 24 years old, where if he lands on a new team in 2026 and they give him a bag like Josh Jacobs, and it's a good offense, we're gonna go, oh man,
yeah.
So I'm just giving you a path.
That's part of why I'm not trading him for nothing. His name value is not just greater in fantasy football circles. I think it's greater in NFL circles. I think Breece Hall is held in very high esteem. He's just not been producing to that level. And so if he hits the open market this year and gets a big bag from someone, we just saw Saquon change teams and be awesome. Derrick Henry change teams and be awesome. Josh Jacobs change teams and be awesome. So that's his future. I don't expect greatness on the Jets this year, but if he gets out and gets a bag, there's still bright days potentially ahead for Breece Hall.
Yeah, real quick before we move on from Breece, for context on like thinking about next year in the offseason as far as who's getting contracts and the competitive level as far as who he's competing with for money. I mean, it's Najee on a 1-year deal, Jalen Warren, Kenneth Walker, it's pretty legit. James Cook, we'll see what they do with him. Brian Robinson, he's the dude in next year's class in terms of like how the NFL views him as a talent, I think.
Yeah, it's Breece and James Cook. Yeah, those two. If neither gets an extension, then those two will be the bells of the ball.
Sure, I agree with that. So yeah, I mean, it is sketchy, but there is a world that exists where he gets a nice 2-3 year deal next year on a contender, and now you're super excited.
You might be receiving an offer today, Jason. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. All right, we are on to Tier 4. I'm calling this the Crowded Crossroads. These are running backs that we have ranked RB 15 through 21. James Cook, Josh Jacobs, Kenneth Walker, some of the guys we just mentioned, RJ Harvey, Chuba Hubbard, Derrick Henry, and Caleb Johnson, who Jason obviously is hot and heavy for. Cook and Walker in a contract year. It's an interesting group because there's a couple of rookies in here that we think can take the step, and yet also they're going to be in a committee to start the year. When we look at Caleb Johnson and RJ Harvey, Cook, does he want to play there? There's been a lot of offseason talk about him. Josh Jacobs, last year we were like, it's probably a 1-year contract. And now look at him. He looks super solid for your roster. Derrick Henry, we were saying the same thing last year. Like, it's probably just a year deal, gets an extension. So of this group, do any of them, are you scared of that you think just has a really low floor in Dynasty? Like, hey, I'm looking at them from the lens of not just 2025 projections, but moving forward. So Betz, anybody here that has a lower floor than you'd like in Dynasty?
I mean, it's hard to talk about Ken Walker without kind of knowing what the future holds there. But as far as like somebody that we view as entrenched in their role, that I could see it going a different direction, it's Chuba for me, who, he was good last year, don't get me wrong, but clearly the Panthers had a plan, and their plan was not Chuba initially. They spent a 2nd-round pick on Jonathan Brooks. So they kind of told us initially how they viewed Chuba as not necessarily the guy of the future, but because of the circumstances, and then he plays himself very well, he earns the contract, things change very, very quickly. So I just kind of have this like doubt in the back of my mind that maybe Chuba isn't getting the workhorse role, the touches that you think he's going to get for a couple years. If we're looking at week 1, week 2 projections, like, yeah, of course. But thinking about beyond this year, I don't feel great about that with Chuba. He didn't really have a ton of production early. These are the guys that I'm always a little hesitant on as far as their career arc in Dynasty. So he's the one that it makes sense why he's here, but I definitely have doubts in the back of my mind as far as his role after 2025.
You think about his arc in Dynasty, if he was on your team, you were not counting on Chuba Hubbard to be, your RB2 for your squad. You weren't thinking about it that way. Now, maybe this offseason you traded for him or you traded him away after the extension that he got midway through the season. But for most rosters, I'm assuming he is not somebody that somebody went into saying, I'm counting on this player.
Yeah, no, he's additional. He's someone that most leagues, whoever's got Chuba was a surprise. Like they were
just
surprised.
Like the Panthers.
And yeah, they were happy. Yeah, I agree that there's some concern here. I love that he's got a contract. He's not actually too old, despite having been in the league for, that he's going into his 5th season. He's 26 with a contract. So it's like, okay, you take a look at him and James Cook. Okay, who's, James Cook, he had so many touchdowns this last year, which was great for his fantasy value, but also scary for future production. And unlike Breece Hall, I think when they hit the free agent market, if he doesn't get an extension from Buffalo, I don't think people are going to be clamoring for James Cook in the open market. So he's someone in this tier that I think I'm a little bit lower on until he gets the contract. It's funny, those two guys, they're not that different in age. One of them has a contract going forward and one of them doesn't. So, and yet most people are like, James Cook, greater sign than Chuba Hubbard. But it might not be that way.
Do you guys think
you traded away Cook, right? Didn't you trade him away, James Cook?
Who, me?
Yes.
No,
in the league.
I've got him on my Dino Junior team. I've got him. I traded him away in another league.
Ironically, Andy had a trade where he traded, I believe, James Cook for Chuba plus stuff.
Interesting. Yeah, I think so. Does your mind change if James Cook signs an extension before the season starts?
Yes, 100%. Very much changes.
I mean, this could look silly in hindsight, but like, it seems like the Bills are like financially and all those sort of things, like kind of understand the market. Like he's asking for top 3 running back money after an incredible season. I would do the same. And they're like, sorry, James, that's not how this works, is kind of how I see it going. I think he plays this year without a deal. And that just scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, that's why he's lower in my rankings right now. Like when I look at Kyron Williams and James Cook, the deals coming or not coming make a huge difference to me. But if you look at my rankings, even though they're both in the same situation, it's basically because I think Kyron's deal will get done. And I will adjust here as we get closer and closer. If we get to August, Kyron's going to move down a little bit if he doesn't get that deal done. I still think it's coming. James Cook, I expect him to play without a new deal this year. If he gets one, he'll be moving up. So that's just kind of sometimes we have to, we have to project what we think's going to happen before we know what's going to happen.
And you have to make moves ahead of time, anticipating, and sometimes you're going to get it wrong. So James Cook would be one of those players that I'm like, I'm okay trading him away based on last season. I know that everybody and their mama is going to talk about regression and touchdowns. It's going to happen. Okay. It's fine. He can still be a really good player. I just think that the value that if somebody wants to chase, this guy's an RB1 for my team. I don't think he felt like an RB1 last year. I had him in a couple spots. He did not feel that way week in, week out. The touchdowns came in spurts. So
yeah.
Tier 5, I'm calling this one last rodeo. Have you guys ever been to a rodeo before?
I've never been to a rodeo.
I have been to 2 rodeos in my life. So
were they a blast?
They were okay. It wasn't really my. I was too young. I don't know if I really liked it. But this group, we have them together, and they're all in the same season of their career. It's Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Alvin Kamara, Tony Pollard, James Conner. These are the old dudes.
The elder statesman not named Derrick Henry.
Yes,
he's a tier
pretty
above.
much.
But yeah, I mean, these are the guys that you need to make sure they're on contenders, right? Like if you're not a contender, trade them to a contender for something. They'll pay for these guys. Get something for Joe Mixon. He's 29 years old. He's a very valuable asset this year. Someone will pay. I mean, a contender should pay a first for Joe Mixon. Like if they if that's going to put them over the top to win a championship, it's worth it. We said that a couple years ago, 2 years ago about Derrick Henry. Like, go pay a first. If you're a contending team, go pay a first for Derrick Henry. Now it turns, I mean, that has been such gold. You've gotten the last 2 years and now a new contract coming. But yeah, if you're a rebuild, you want to get something for these guys because they're not long for the NFL.
Yeah, last year I knew I was entering a rebuild phase. I traded David Montgomery for a first plus something else because it was in season. He felt super valuable. You know, you had the upside if Gibbs went down, then Montgomery. All of these guys, if you are rebuilding, feels like guys that you want to be able to trade away for a first in season because people are going to get desperate and there's going to be injuries. If you're on the other side of this, are you wanting to give away a first though? I mean, that's like I don't love doing that for a player that could evaporate a year from now. And yet that's the going rate. It's somewhere between that. And Betz, it looks like here, like you traded the 204 in a rookie draft for Mixon. That's a better price to be able to pay.
Oh, that would be awesome.
It was super flex. Obviously, there was rookie fever at the time. As a contender, I was like, this is great. So I will take the shot there. Yeah, it doesn't feel good trading a first for these guys. But like you guys said, in season, there's going to be probably somewhere around 6 teams competing for the services of these running backs that are volume plays, that are getting 18 touches a game. Like, you need those guys to win titles. So that will be the going rate probably in 2 or 3 months as we get close to your Dynasty League trade deadline. So you can forecast out a little bit and probably get them a little cheaper now. Maybe a second plus something, 2 seconds, something along those lines. I would make those moves if you're planning ahead and you are legit going all in this year, because like we said, the first round pick will be the going rate for these guys. You know, when the season starts.
Some of these guys right now, I think you could get the deal done with a 2. You know, Montgomery, Kamara, Pollard, Connor. I think half of leagues. I mean, obviously, it depends on what the roster is like that they're on. But if those type of players are on teams that aren't that great, then I think you could probably get them for a second.
2 of these running backs are on teams that know how to run the football. David Montgomery and James Conner. Like, the Cardinals were wildly good at running the football, if you didn't notice this past year. And then I look at these other 3 and I'm like, oh God, I don't trust the offenses. Like, the Texans, we have to reset because they don't have Bobby Slowick anymore. It's Nick Caley. But like, Tony Pollard, other than volume, was not good last year. Like, efficiency-wise was bad. He had 5 touchdowns. And the question is the offense going to be that much better? Maybe. But if he only gets like 6 or 7, so he's a player of this group that I'm like, he's the least desirable of this group. Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I would agree he's the least desirable.
Okay.
They're all old enough to where I don't really have age as like, oh, he's 28 and James Conner's 30, so Pollard's better. You're getting near that place where it doesn't matter. And obviously Kamara's pass catching, kind of, the Saints stink, but if, again, you're going to catch that many passes, you're going to be good for fantasy.
All right, let me put it to the test then. Of this group, who has the most total touchdowns in 2025? Between Mixon, Montgomery, Kamara, Pollard, and Connor. Most touchdowns.
Montgomery.
I'm going
Montgomery or Mixon for me.
I'm going James Conner.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
Who sees the most total work, most total opportunities of this group?
Mixon.
Total opportunities, including targets, I will go Kamara.
Okay. And then here's the last question. Which of these guys is for sure a starter in 2026, aside from injury? Because somebody in this group will probably get more than just a year. We're viewing them through the lens of 2025 because you don't really need to project out. They're so old. They're going to die out.
I don't know all the contract situations. If Montgomery's got another year under contract, Montgomery will continue to have his role, I believe.
He does.
Kamara, I assume, has 18 years left on his contract because the Saints always have to kick the can down the road and keep extending. So I think he'll be back as well. Those are the 2 that I think are the safest to have their jobs.
Yeah, James Conner technically has 1 more year. There's an out in his contract after, 2 more years, this year and next year. There's an out after this year where they can cut him for 2.5 in dead cap. So I feel like he's probably around for 1 more year, though. That team just loves him. The way Jonathan Gannon talks about him, man, they love James Conner. So I think he assuming health, he's probably back for 1 more go around next year.
Yeah, and Pollard can be cut for $2 million this next year, so he's the one that feels the most iffy. I mean, Mixon does as well, but I like these players. I want them on my roster. I just don't want to overpay for what feels like just
you should
year.
not overpay.
All right, tier 6. We're almost at the very end here, but all I'm calling this one is wait. This feels like redraft because you get to a certain tier with running backs. Betz, you mentioned it dries up. When you get past RB25, you start to look at the list and go, oh yeah, this guy kind of feels like, a flex. It's DeAndre Swift, the Giants running backs, Pacheco, Brian Robinson, Aaron Jones, who's about to be 31 years old, Jalen Warren, Travis Etienne. All of these guys feel...
Oh, man, Travis Etienne. Oh, I mean, you just named a bunch of hot garbage, and then you dropped Travis Etienne, who was what was he, the running back 7 in consensus startup last year?
Yes.
Oh, man. Just worthless. Just why even have him in this tier? Just
should be his own tier.
I was going to drop him to the waivers in Dynasty.
Just his own tier. So
sad.
I wanted to bring up the Giants running backs. I'll be honest. I've approached this offseason in best ball and other formats as I don't care about the Giants running backs. I part of my stance has been, is this offense going to be good enough to generate, and will there be a guy that takes over? And if it's Scatterboo, that's great. I think there's also a lot of me that looks at college film and then goes, I want you to do that in the NFL, which is very different than will you do the NFL, or will they let you do this as a day 3 pick? So how are you looking at the Giants running back? Because we have them here in this tier, and yet a year from now, both of them could be irrelevant. They take somebody else, the offense stinks, whatever it is. So
the
Jason,
highest odds are that next year both of these players are mostly irrelevant because it's very high odds that they're not a good team, right? I think most people would agree that this is not like a contending Giants franchise right now. So you're not going to score a ton of points with the quarterback play. And both players most likely will be involved. Tyrone Tracy Jr. and Cam Scatterboo will be eating into each other's work. So if you're not a great offense, a good franchise, and you're not getting the volume, like Tyrone Tracy was good because he was getting the volume. Now Cam might eat into that, and Tyrone eats into his. So at the end of next year, most likely outcome is that these guys are irrelevant. And all of that is worthless to me. I am 100% in on Cam Scatterboo. I will push all my chips in. The dude is freaking awesome. He will play his way onto the field. He will make the Giants good. He will demand. He will not be given anything. He will take what is his, and he will get the rock, and he will, by the end of this season, he'll be awesome. So most likely, no. But what will happen? Cam Scatterboo's awesome, and I'll go offer picks. I'm gonna go find who's got him now. I'm gonna go offer something. I'm gonna go get Cam Scatterboo.
I feel like Jason just gave like a pregame speech to the locker room, or like to himself in the mirror.
Dable needs it. He's gonna be gone from his job. Dable needs that speech.
Oh goodness.
Yeah. Well, Dable needs Cam Scatterboo. Go watch what. No one can tackle the guy.
But
I know it don't make sense, but nobody can tackle him.
Already over when we look at isn't he wearing number 44?
Yeah, that's a red flag.
Yeah,
that is a red flag. But
you don't like Kyle Juszczyk?
Come on,
it's not a lead back number.
No, it's not a lead back number, but it don't matter.
The thing about
he overcomes.
The thing about both these guys, kind of like Jason said, is that you probably need one guy to get everything to be like an RB2, because if they're splitting and not scoring touchdowns, which if you're looking at the futures market and betting and all those sort of things, the touchdown expectation for the Giants this year is downright embarrassing. So if they're not scoring touchdowns, it's hard. You just can't be there unless you're getting the pass catching work and all of the touches. So you need one guy to do that. I think when you're looking at the situation, like Jason said, your hope is it's Scatterboo, that they had Tracy. It was kind of a nice story last year. He did some nice things for the team, but they recognized that something was missing in the backfield and they replaced it with Scatterboo. So that's who I'm kind of investing more in, just because it's the rookie unknown. But to Tracy's credit, like for what they asked him to do last year as far as his draft capital and stuff, he was decent. Obviously a replacement level player, but decent for what he did. So yeah, it could be just gross all around, but sometimes good things happen in these kind of ambiguous situations that you think are gross and end up being okay.
And we're not. I'm just gonna say it because it's worth mentioning that this could be like what the Jaguars was last year, where you're like, oh no, do I want any of these running back? Like Tank Bigsby was good running the football, and yet like in the passing game he was irrelevant. And then they also technically have Devin Singletary under contract. If they cut him, $6 million. They're saving like $500,000. So
he'll be on the team.
I don't really know what the plan is here. So that's a weird backfield. I wouldn't be trying to overpay. And I guess in Dynasty, you don't have to be so bold. Like you need to be bold about making an educated guess. And yet, like, I don't think it's going to make or break your Dynasty team if you trade for Cam Scadaboo or Tyrone Tracy. If anything, Tracy would have been a great candidate before the draft to trade. Like, just move on and you can be done with that. All right, I want to move on to one more tier, and then we'll be done. I just want to mention them. Tier 7. I put them as just here to mess with you. Okay? These are a bunch of running backs at the very end of our top 40. Charbonnet, Najee Harris, Ramondre, Byshal Tootin, Tank Bigsby, Trey Benson, that if you have them on your roster, cool, they're a depth piece. But at the end of the day, are you going after any of these guys? Because I feel like they're just there to screw over the other dudes on the roster.
The only one that I think has a legitimate path towards maybe being something important in fantasy is Trey Benson. Last year's rookie, he was clearly behind James Conner. James Conner was just too dang good. James Conner is still the starter. James Conner seems like he will never stop, but also he's very, very old, and he's been injury prone throughout his career. He plays a style of play that is very difficult to not get injured. If he gets injured, what Trey Benson showed as the season went along, like in the beginning, we knew in camp he was very disappointing. We're from Arizona. We hear a lot of the local stuff. His name was nowhere. He was not talked up. He was irrelevant. It was James Conner's show, and they have a depth piece rookie that it does not matter. As the season went along, you saw him start to get a little bit more involved, look a little better. I think he figured it out. He's still a talented rookie. I really liked his film. I think he is good, and he showed some flashes at the end of last season that made me think if James Conner gets injured, he could play his way into becoming an important piece. If that happens, this is one of those where he's going to cost almost nothing to acquire right now, and he'll cost too much should something happen to James Conner. So if you want him as an insurance back, I think that's a good option. The rest are just like veterans on your team that can be used on a bye week or an injury situation.
Agreed. I think from this list, we already talked about Najee with the Omarion Hampton discussion. Just real quick on Ramondre, he is making a ton of money over the next 2 years as far as his cap hit is concerned and his dead cap situation. Of course, things could be reworked, but if he is cut after 2026, it is a $21 million dead cap situation. So I know it's a new regime and all those things, but like it kind of feels like there could be a role for him alongside Travion Henderson. And I'm not saying that means that he's going to be great in fantasy, but think about Travion and when he was at his best over these last couple of years, it was part of a committee. So I think Ramondre is one of those gross names on your roster that you don't feel great about having, obviously, but you could look up at the end of the year and you're like, oh, actually I had him in my flex more often than I realized, or I was starting him more often than I realized, and it could work out, especially if you think that they take a step forward with the new regime, with Drake May and all those things. So I think Ramondre is like a gross guy to maybe just like add in a trade to get him on your squad. Don't overpay, obviously, but I think he'll have a role alongside Travion.
That's going to do it for this podcast. Next week, we will be talking quarterbacks, talking about tiers and what can help you in your Superflex leagues. Make sure you check out the Draft Analyzer, ultimatedraftkit.com, so that your entire Dynasty League can be analyzed. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your Dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.